you always get what you want, invariably. Even though you may think that it's entirely opposed to your wishes. But if it's your karma, everything that happens to you, put in another way, everything that comes to you is a return to you of what goes out of you. Yes, obviously, that's absurd. If you confine the definition of yourself to your voluntary, conscious behavior. That's a ridiculous definition of oneself. Oneself, by any stretch of the imagination, must involve far more than the conscious and voluntary aspects of our behavior. And if we see that it involves intimately and inescapably the behavior of what we call the other, the not-self, the environment, and see that these two are moving together like the two sides of the snake when it swims, then you get a very curious feeling. You have to be careful of it if you've got a Western background. Because, and this is what happens to a lot of people who play around with psychedelic chemicals, there are many, many cases of inflation among these people. That is to say, when you get this sensation that the two sides of the world, the inside and the outside, are moving together, you may think, I am ruling it. I am God in the Western sense of the word. Therefore, your ego, instead of being, as it were, integrated and transcended with all this process, merely assumes vast dimensions, has megalomania, is blown up by the mystical experience. And so you get the holier-than-thou people going around who seem to think that they're above all human conventions and have no obligations to anyone or anything, because they're divine and they can do as they damn please. What they haven't realized is that doing as you will isn't a new kind of behavior that you suddenly put on and say, from now on I'm going to go around doing as I will. You have to realize first that that's what you've always been doing. And you could look at this from a very simple point of view. It's not a complete point of view. But you can say, well, now what about the people who did good and who did the things that they didn't want to do? You know, everybody's mother said to us, darling, sometimes we have to do things we don't like. Well, what about that? Well, you can always say, the kid obeyed the mother and did the thing that it didn't like because that was the better part of wisdom. In other words, if it hadn't done that, something worse would have happened. And we choose the lesser of two evils. And when you find yourself in a situation where you have to choose the lesser of two evils, then you say, I want out of here. And you take the easiest way. You take the line of least resistance. So that's your doing. Now, you can pursue that more profoundly when you stop thinking about human behavior as something that responds to the compulsion of an environment. And you can get out of that when you see the behavior of the environment as an essential aspect of you. So it isn't, as it were, the environment starting something, which you are therefore compelled to follow. It's the whole system moving together. So then, you get in the state of liberated or mystical consciousness, you very often feel that a hill is lifting you up as you walk up it. The ground seems to heave beneath your feet, and up you go. And you get this strange feeling of lightness, of effortlessness, walking on air, never a care, you know, this wonderful sense that there are no obstructions anywhere. There's nothing, as it were, banging you and making you do that. It all flows together. And that's a very common sense. You are actually, in that state of consciousness, you are perceiving the goings-on, the Tao, the course of nature, in the way it's happening. But in the ordinary way, you've been conditioned to resist it, to fight it, and to use those sensations of resistance to create a sensory basis for what you describe as the ego. The ego in practice is a sense of strain. When you are aware of I, you are aware of a basic discomfort, which is located basically between the eyes, somewhere in here, a sort of tightness. Also, it's in other centers too. It's in the solar plexus, and there are various physical centers, in other words, where this constant tension or resistance against it is going on. And that's what you feel when you talk about I. When that tension ceases, you discover immediately that the separate ego has disappeared, and that what I refers to is simply the total panorama of experience, everything that's happening. Obviously, I don't know all of it, because I can't inspect all of it with my radar, with my conscious attention. That would be a ridiculous undertaking, to know everything in that sense. We know it in a much better way, as we know how to grow hair and open and close our hands. So, this point of view can be understood if we clarify the initial problems we have about it. And I suppose the first problem is, if we accept the notion that everything that happens to us is our own karma, our own doing, then we have to be very careful of, shall we say, the devil of omnipotence, of inflation, of feeling that your ego is what is in control of all this. And the second thing is, if you think then that everything that happens to everybody is what they really want to happen, then you can absolve yourself from any qualms about being unkind to someone, because you could say, well, the unkindness I did you was what you really wanted, wasn't it? You know that business about the responsibility of the person who gets murdered for getting murdered? There is a curious sense in which a lot of people go around looking for trouble. Freud pointed out quite correctly the psychology of accident-prone individuals. They seem to be attracting trouble like lights attract moths. And we're all doing that, but we manage to remain unconscious of it, so that we can praise and blame and play the game which says, that's not my fault, that's your fault. And so we go around apportioning faults to everybody. Because if we're going to apportion praise for what the good things people do, you can't make praise mean anything unless you also go around blaming. Praise and blame go together. Supposing everybody was acting in a praiseworthy way, and we praised everybody for everything, they'd get tired of it. They wouldn't even notice it anymore. So long as you're going to get a kick out of being praised, you've got to go around blaming too. It's very simple. But if you see the folly of that praising and blaming are just creating each other, then you don't praise and you don't blame. You just dig the whole thing. And that's why, when we encounter very great sages, you never hear them blame people, and they very rarely praise anyone. You try to start gossip in the presence of such a person, and you make a derogatory comment about someone. It's as if you had thrown a rock into a well and heard no splash. And a funny feeling, because that you get no response. You get no agreement. And if you praise somebody, there's also likely nothing to be said, except perhaps some remark that, of course, you're praising the beloved in all its manifestations. And this disconcerts some people terribly. I've always noticed that real sages never gossip, never criticize persons. And because they understand so well The French saying, tout comprendre, c'est tout pardonner, to understand all is to forgive all, is so true if you are experienced in just the ordinary way of dealing with human problems. If you've been a counselor or psychotherapist or minister or anything like that, you very soon get to realize how vastly complicated people are, and to see that they really are in the messes they're in, not because of anything, but that's the way it is. And you stop blaming people, and because you don't blame people, you have open ears, and people come and seek your advice. They don't want to come to someone who's a counselor who will bawl them out. It's like dentists who simply accept the fact that people really don't take care of their teeth, and realize that the job of a dentist is precisely to look after people who can't be bothered to take care of their teeth. That's why he's in business. So a good dentist doesn't bawl his patients out because they didn't do this, that, and the other. Just accept it. Same with doctors. They know perfectly well that nobody's going to live by the rules of health. And they're very vague as to what they are. And, you know, there's every kind of theory about how you ought to live and what is healthy, but they change in fashion. And you ought to eat this kind of diet in 1921. By the time it's 1930, they've changed their ideas altogether. And by the time it's 1960, it's back again to a mixture between 1921 and 1894. Something like that. You see, it's always changing. So while the rules are not so... See, if they were all absurd, it would be easy. They're not all absurd. There's some truth in it, always. But nobody's ever quite sure. So the function of healers and doctors and so on is just to do what can be done to stop the mess getting too messy. And they must accept it as that. That's their job. If I were healthy, say to the doctor, I wouldn't need you. So you're in business. Now, what about it then? We have difficulty in seeing this mutuality of our relationship to the rest of the world because it's contrary to common sense, contrary to the way we've been brought up. And therefore we have what I would call an initial intellectual block to understanding it, quite apart from any emotional blocks or anything of that kind. But obviously, we must overcome that intellectual block if we're going to go any further and actually realize and feel this way of life's working and this relationship between what you do and what happens to you. Then the question arises, then what do I do? Do I go around saying to myself, all this that's happening to you is what I wanted? I am inside and outside. I am the subjective and I am the objective. And I mean to go around thinking thoughts about this, so as it were to talk yourself into this way of feeling. Well, that's very superficial, because this new sense of relationship to nature is something much more than an idea. See, ecologists and physicists have the idea that this is so, but they mostly in their private life and in their ordinary human behavior are just like other people who don't feel it and who feel themselves in a Newtonian billiards game, even though they've gone on to quantum mechanics. So that there may be a transition from our ordinary way of feeling how things go on to the new way, we have to do something other than think. Because actually thinking is causing the trouble. It is by thinking that we divide the world into separate events and separate things. That is calculus. And Ananda Kumaraswamy once described the life of the liberated being as a perpetual, uncalculated life in the present. And you say, wow, I don't think I could do that. That saying of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, be not anxious for the morrow, the uncalculated life. If God so clothe the grass of the field, will he not much more clothe you, faithless ones? And I've never met a preacher yet who would really take that up. They all say, well, of course, that's too hard a saying for most of us. It's not practical. Everybody has to take thought for the morrow and calculate. Well, at this point, people can go in two directions. There's one class of people who will say, all right, let's live the uncalculated life. Let's not make any plans. And before you know where they are, they're living in a filthy pad and scrounging around and living on petty thievery and so on. This is the usual thing. This is got into it the wrong way. The first thing to do is, just as I said, whether you like it or not, and whether you know it or not, the relationship between you and the environment is always one that is harmonious. So in the same way, you are always living the uncalculated life. You have to find out, first of all, that you're always doing it, and that what you call your calculations and the things you did were funny little rationalizations. In other words,
you've probably noticed this peculiar phenomenon, haven't you? You go to a gathering, a party, some social event, and you watch the people around you. They're animated, energized, feeding off the crowd like they're plugging into some great cosmic battery. They get louder as the evening goes on, more expansive, more alive. And then there's you, standing in the corner perhaps, or making your way through the motions. And with each passing hour you can feel something draining out of you, like someone opened a tap at the bottom of your being, and your life force is slowly trickling away. And you wonder, what's wrong with me? Why am I not like them? Why does this thing that seems to enliven everyone else leave me feeling utterly depleted, exhausted, sometimes even a bit desperate to escape? Well, let me tell you something. There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing at all. What you're experiencing is not a deficiency or a flaw in your design. You're simply wired differently. And the world, in its infinite wisdom, created both kinds of beings for very good reasons. You see, we've been sold this idea that the extroverted way of being is the right way, the healthy way, the normal way. That if you're not energized by crowds, if you don't seek out constant stimulation and interaction, then something must be broken in you. But this is nonsense, complete and utter nonsense. It's like saying that because some flowers bloom in full sunlight, the ones that prefer shade are somehow defective. The universe expresses itself in infinite variety. Some creatures are nocturnal, some diurnal, some hunt in packs, others alone. And among humans, some of us are built to process the world internally, in depth, in silence and solitude. We're not lesser versions of extroverts. We're different instruments in the orchestra, playing different notes, and both are necessary for the symphony. Now, what's actually happening at these gatherings that leaves you so drained? Let me explain it to you, because once you understand the mechanism, you'll stop pathologizing yourself and start honoring your own nature. When you walk into a room full of people, your nervous system begins doing something quite extraordinary. It's reading the room, not just consciously, but at levels far below conscious awareness. You're picking up on tones of voice, facial micro-expressions, body language, the subtle emotional currents flowing between people. You're processing an enormous amount of data, far more than you realize. The extrovert in the room is doing something different. They're broadcasting. They're putting out energy, and they're getting energy back from the responses they receive. It's an exchange, you see. And for them, it's energizing because they're built for this kind of external processing. Their nervous system is designed to engage with the outer world in this direct, immediate way. But you're taking it all in. You're like a sponge, absorbing the emotional weather of the room. And here's the thing. You're not just observing it from a distance. You're actually feeling it. When someone in the room is anxious, you feel that anxiety in your own body. When there's tension between two people across the room, you sense it like a disturbance in the field. You're not just at the party, you're processing the party at a much deeper level. And this takes energy, tremendous energy. It's like the difference between watching a river from the shore and swimming in it. The extrovert is on the shore, watching, commenting, enjoying the view. You're in the water, feeling every current, every change in temperature, every bit of turbulence. Of course you're going to be tired afterward. You've been working, even though it doesn't look like work to the outside world. There's another aspect to this that's crucial to understand. Most social gatherings operate on a certain level of pretense. People are performing their social selves. They're not being authentic, not really. They're playing the game, wearing the mask, presenting the version of themselves that's acceptable, pleasant, appropriate. And for most people, this is fine. They can slip into the role quite easily, and they don't even notice they're doing it. But you notice. You notice the gap between what people are saying and what they're actually feeling. You notice the forced laughter, the polite lies, the conversations that are all surface and no substance. And this creates a kind of dissonance in you, a friction, because you can't quite participate in the pretense with the same ease. You want something real, something genuine, some actual connection beneath all the social choreography. And so you're caught. You're at this gathering, trying to play the game because that's what's expected, but simultaneously aware that it's a game. It's like being in a play where everyone else has forgotten their actors and thinks the stage is real life, and you're the only one who can still see the scenery for what it is. This awareness is exhausting. This double consciousness, being in the experience while simultaneously being aware of the artificiality of the experience, it takes a toll. Now, contrast this with what happens when you're alone. When you're alone, you can drop all the masks. You don't have to perform. You don't have to manage anyone else's emotional state or navigate complex social dynamics. You can just be. And in that being, in that simple, uncomplicated existence, there's a profound rest. The extrovert experiences being alone differently. For them, solitude can feel empty, understimulating. They need the external input, the interaction, the stimulation of other minds and personalities to feel fully alive. But for you, solitude is not deprivation, it's restoration. It's where you recharge. It's where you process all that input you've been absorbing, where you integrate your experiences, where you reconnect with yourself. This is why, after a gathering, you often need a significant recovery period. You're not just tired from staying up late or from the physical activity. You're tired because you've been processing vast amounts of subtle information, maintaining your social performance, managing the dissonance between authenticity and pretense, and absorbing the emotional field of everyone around you. You need time to discharge all of that, to let your nervous system settle, to return to your baseline. And here's what society doesn't tell you, what you need to understand in your bones. This is not a weakness. This is not something to be fixed or overcome. The depth of processing you're capable of, the sensitivity of your perception, these are gifts. Yes, they come with challenges. Yes, they make certain situations more difficult. But they also allow you to see things others miss, to understand at levels others cannot reach, to experience life with a richness and depth that the purely extroverted person may never know. The problem is not that you're drained by social gatherings. The problem is that we live in a society that has organized itself around extroverted values and then pathologized everyone who doesn't fit that mold. We've created a world where constant interaction is valued over deep reflection, where breadth of social connection is prized over depth of understanding, where being the life of the party is seen as superior to being the thoughtful observer in the corner. But think about what the world would lose if everyone was an extrovert. Who would do the deep thinking? Who would create the art, write the books, make the scientific discoveries that require long hours of solitary focus? Who would see the patterns that emerge only in quiet contemplation? Who would understand the subtle truths that reveal themselves only to those who know how to be still? The universe needs both. It needs the ones who are energized by interaction and the ones who are energized by solitude. It needs the broadcasters and the receivers. It needs those who skim along the surface of life and those who dive into the depths. Both are necessary. Both are valuable. Both are exactly as they should be. So when you find yourself at a gathering, feeling that familiar drain beginning, you can make a choice. You can honor your nature instead of fighting it. You can leave early without guilt. You can find the one or two people there who are capable of real conversation and spend your time with them rather than trying to work the whole room. You can take breaks, step outside, give yourself moments of quiet in the midst of the noise. And you can stop measuring yourself against the extroverts in the room. Stop thinking that their way of being is the right way and yours is the wrong way. They're playing their instrument, you're playing yours. Neither is better, they're just different notes in the same cosmic song. What you're experiencing at these gatherings is not pathology. It's sensitivity, it's depth. It's a particular way of processing reality that has its own wisdom, its own gifts, its own place in the grand scheme of things. The drain you feel is simply the cost of being built for depth in a world that often operates on the surface. But here's the beautiful thing. Once you truly accept this about yourself, once you stop trying to be something you're not, once you honor your need for solitude and limited social interaction, you'll find that the social interactions you do have become more meaningful, because you're no longer scattering your energy trying to be like everyone else. You're being yourself, and that authenticity attracts the kind of connections that actually nourish rather than drain you. You'll find your people, the other deep processors, the other ones who prefer one profound conversation to 10 superficial ones, the other ones who know that silence between two people can be more intimate than any words. And with these people, gathering won't feel like such a drain, because there's less pretense, less performance, more genuine meeting. So the next time you're at a gathering and you feel that drain beginning, remember this: you're not broken, you're not antisocial, you're not defective. You're a different kind of instrument, built for a different kind of music. And the world needs your music just as much as it needs the loud, bright songs of the extroverts. Honor your nature, protect your energy, and trust that being exactly who you are is not just okay, it's necessary. It's just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. Yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Have you ever noticed that suffering is not so much in the pain itself, but in the way we cling to it, resist it, and try to escape from it? It's curious, isn't it? The moment you resist a thing, you magnify it. The moment you push against a thought, you give it strength. And so much of what we call suffering isn't in the rain that falls upon us, but in the way we curse the storm. Now, I'm not suggesting that life is free of difficulty. Far from it. Life has always been a dance of opposites. Pain and pleasure, gain and loss, birth and death, they are as inseparable as the front and the back of a coin. But here is the trick. You see, suffering is not the same as pain. Pain is simply what is. The sting of loss, the ache of the body, the tears of parting, these are natural as the tides. But suffering is the story we weave around it. It is the why me. It is the clinging, the holding on, the desperate attempt to control what was never in our control. There is an old saying in Zen, let go or be dragged. And this is precisely the matter at hand. When you stop clutching, when you let the river flow, you find that the water carries you. But when you stiffen, when you insist on paddling against the current, you exhaust yourself. And then, of course, you call that exhaustion suffering. Now imagine this for a moment. Suppose you are sitting in a concert hall, listening to the most marvelous symphony. The violins rise, the horns call, the drums thunder, and then there are those soft silences between notes. If you tried to cling to one particular note, one particular moment, you would miss the music entirely. And yet that is what so many of us do with life. We clutch to the past, we resist the present, and we demand that the future turn out just so. And in this struggle, we suffer. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Isn't that delightful? You stir up the pond, and then you panic, wondering why you cannot see. But if you would only stop meddling, if you would let the water settle on its own, it becomes clear again. This is the essence of ending suffering. To stop trying to force clarity, to stop grasping for control, to let life be. And yet, here comes the paradox. The very moment you try to let go, you will find yourself grasping at letting go. You will say, I must stop suffering, I must drop it, I must let it go. And suddenly, suffering is right back in the room, laughing at you. So, what do? You don't do. You notice, you watch. You become aware of this game you are playing. And in that very awareness, a kind of miracle happens. The grasping begins to loosen on its own. This is why I often say, man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. Life is a game, a play, a cosmic hide and seek. You are it, pretending not to be it. You are the universe playing at being a person. And the moment you recognize that this whole drama isn't meant to be taken with such deadly seriousness, you begin to laugh at your suffering. And what happens when you laugh? You loosen, you breathe, you live. Think of a child. A child falls, scrapes its knee, and within moments they are up again, laughing, running. The pain is there, yes, but it has not yet solidified into suffering. Why? Because the child has not learned to weave long stories about it. They haven't yet learned to cling. But we as adults become very good at storytelling. We carry our wounds like treasures, retelling them, protecting them, building identities around them. And in this endless narration, we suffer far more than the original wound ever required. So let me tell you a story. One you may have heard before, but it bears repeating. There was once a Chinese farmer. One day his horse ran away, and the neighbors came and said, "Oh, that's too bad." And the farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day the horse returned, bringing with it 7 wild horses, and the neighbors came again and said, "Why, how wonderful." And the farmer said, "Maybe." The day after, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, and he was thrown off, breaking his leg. The neighbors rushed in, "Oh, that's terrible." And again the farmer said, "Maybe." The very next day, conscription officers came, looking for young men to draft into the army. But because the son had a broken leg, they passed him by. And the neighbors cried, "How fortunate!" And the farmer, as always, replied, "Maybe." Now, the point of this story is not about being clever or detached. It's about seeing that life is endlessly unfolding, and our judgments of good and bad, fortunate and unfortunate, are terribly short-sighted. When you see this, you begin to loosen your grip on things. You stop suffering over each twist of the plot, because you realize you are not meant to judge the story, you are meant to experience it. Man is a little bit afraid. He wonders what will happen next. But that is precisely the adventure. The attempt to escape suffering is often the very root of it. You fear the unknown, you fear loss, you fear death. But all of these are part of the adventure. The trick, you see, is not to get rid of the storm, but to learn to dance in the rain, not to abolish the silence, but to hear the music within it, not to conquer death, but to realize that death is what makes life so exquisitely alive. And so, if you wish to stop suffering now, don't begin with the attempt to rearrange life. Begin with the way you see it. Look at the river, look at the sky, look at your own thoughts, rising and falling like clouds, and see they were never under your control anyway. When you allow them to flow, you discover a strange thing. Suffering evaporates, and in its place there is a kind of deep, wordless peace. It is not the peace of having solved everything, but the peace of no longer needing to. The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. Suffering comes from our desperate attempt to make the impermanent permanent. We want the joy without the loss, the life without the death, the gain without the risk. But this is to want a one-sided coin, and a one-sided coin does not exist. When you see this, when you truly see it, you stop fighting the rhythm of life, and in that moment suffering dissolves. So perhaps the invitation is not to escape suffering, but to see through it, to recognize it as a trick of the mind, a tightening where loosening is possible. And in this recognition, right here, right now, you are free. So we have this feeling of being a lonely little me, inside a bag of skin, looking out at a world that is foreign and often threatening. We feel that we came into this world. But did you? Or did you come out of it? Like an apple comes out of an apple tree. Have you noticed this peculiar illusion we carry? The sense that we are strangers in the universe, accidental visitors, isolated egos inside these fragile shells of flesh. We imagine ourselves tossed into a world that does not belong to us, that is indifferent or hostile. And because of this illusion, we feel lonely. We feel afraid. We feel the weight of being a separate self, adrift in a vast, uncaring cosmos. But pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, did you really come into this world? Or did you come out of it? Just as a leaf comes out of a branch, just as the wave rises out of the sea, the universe has been unfolding for billions of years. And here you are, a blossoming, an expression, a ripple in its eternal dance. You are not a visitor. You are the happening itself. Consider the wave. A wave curls upon the ocean surface. It rises, takes form, gathers strength, and if it could think, it might say, look at me, I am a wave, I am important, separate, special. But the wave also fears. It sees its own end approaching as it tumbles toward the shore. It trembles at the crash, thinking it will vanish forever, and so it suffers. But what the wave forgets, what we forget, is that it is never separate from the ocean. Its water is the ocean's water. Its motion is the ocean's motion. The crash upon the shore is not the end of the wave, but a transformation. It returns to the sea, just as it always was the sea. You are that wave. You may call yourself by a name, John or Jane, but your true identity is oceanic. You are the universe itself, playing at being a temporary ripple. And when you see this, fear dissolves. Loneliness fades, because you realize you cannot fall out of the ocean. You cannot be lost. You are the ocean, forever folding into new forms. Now let's deepen this. The universe is not merely ocean, but a great play of opposites. Light and dark, sound and silence, life and death. We live in a system of polarity. The crest of the wave cannot exist without the trough. The heartbeat itself, systole and diastole, contraction and expansion. If the heart stopped alternating, you would not be alive. Yet what do? We try to cling to one side and reject the other. We worship the light but curse the darkness. We chase pleasure but resist pain. We want to live but we fear death. And here is the trick. You cannot have one without the other. It's like trying to play a game of chess with only white pieces, or trying to listen to music with only sound and no silence. The opposites define one another. Without the background of night, the stars would not shine. Without silence, music would be meaningless. Without death, life would lose its urgency, its beauty. But suffering arises when we forget this is a game, when we treat one side as an enemy to be conquered, rather than a partner in the dance. The yin-yang symbol, you see, is not static. It's always turning, always flowing. The black contains the seed of white, and the white contains the seed of black. They chase one another like lovers, like dancers. The universe is not at war with itself. It is in love with itself. It is playing, it is dancing. And you are one of its graceful movements. Now let's take another metaphor. Imagine life as a grand theater. The curtain rises, the actors step onto the stage, and the play begins. To be a good actor, you must believe in your role. If you are playing the tragic hero, you must weep real tears. If you are playing the clown, you must laugh with all your heart. But the great actor never forgets. This is a role. The tears are real, yet they are also play. When the curtain falls, the actor steps off stage, removes the costume, and goes home. Now here is the human predicament. We have forgotten we are actors. We are stuck on the stage, utterly convinced The play is reality itself. We take our role as John or Mary with such seriousness, such gravity, that we suffer as if the play were eternal. But what happens when you remember, when you see that the role is temporary, that the curtain will fall? You do not stop acting. In fact, you act even better, because you can give yourself fully to the role, knowing it is not the whole of you. You are not just the actor, you are the audience, watching the play unfold. You are the playwright, weaving the story. You are the stage itself, upon which the drama appears. And when you realize this, the tragedy loses its sting, the comedy sparkles, and even the sorrows of life become part of the magnificent performance. But perhaps the deepest illusion of all is the sense of separation. This feeling of being a lonely little me, trapped in a bag of skin, peering out at a world that is other. Science will tell you quite correctly that your body is made of stardust, that the iron in your blood was forged in the heart of stars that exploded billions of years ago, that the breath you inhale right now was exhaled by trees, and the breath you exhale is food for them. You are not separate from the environment. You are the environment. You don't live in the universe. You are the universe, living as this particular form for a little while. The illusion of being separate is the root of fear, and thus the root of suffering. Because if you believe you are only this fragile ego, you must constantly defend it, protect it, cling to it, and of course it feels terrifying to lose it. But when you see through the illusion, when you realize you are the ocean, the wave, the actor, the stage, the whole cosmic drama, then death itself loses its teeth. Because how can the universe lose itself? It is only changing costume, only shifting masks, only moving from one dance to another. Let me share with you one final image. The Hindus say the universe is a game of hide and seek. God, or Brahman, hides from himself by becoming us, by becoming the world of forms, by pretending to be you and forgetting. Why? Because there is no fun in playing a game where you already know the ending. So the self hides from itself, takes on the disguise of you, and pretends to be lost. And the whole adventure of life is the thrill of seeking. But sooner or later, the game reaches its turning point. The mask slips, the curtain is lifted, and you remember, it was me all along. I was the seeker and the sought, the hider and the finder, the player and the game. And then you laugh, because you realize suffering was never more than forgetting the playful nature of it all. You are the aperture through which the universe is looking at itself and exploring itself. And when you know this, not as an idea, but as a lived reality, life transforms. The fear of death loosens. The grip of loneliness fades. The seriousness of suffering dissolves. Because you remember, you are not merely in the cosmos. You are the cosmos. And this whole drama, with its joys and sorrows, is your play. So how does one stop suffering now? The ego's first instinct is to find a method, a technique, a new thing to do, to try even harder to control the game. But that is like a person trapped in quicksand, struggling. It only sinks them deeper. The way is not to grasp, but to let go. We human beings are funny creatures. When faced with the challenge of suffering, our first thought is always, what should I do? We want a prescription, a technique, a map. We want some clever method that will finally fix it all. But do you see the trick here? The very one who is suffering, the grasping, anxious self, is the one trying to end suffering. It's like a dog chasing its own tail, or like a man in quicksand who thrashes and flails, only to sink deeper with every effort. The harder you try to be free, the more tightly you bind yourself. Because the very act of trying is rooted in resistance, and resistance is the seed of suffering. This is why control never quite works. You say to yourself, I must let go, I must relax, I must trust, and already you are clutching at relaxation, grasping at trust, forcing yourself to let go. It's absurd, isn't it? And yet, this is the human predicament. We try to control the uncontrollable. We try to clutch the river with our hands. And then we wonder why we come up empty. Letting go is not something you do. It is what happens when you see that there is nothing to hold on to. It's like opening your hand and realizing it was empty all along. It is that we are constantly labeling events as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate, based on a tiny sliver of perspective. But the truth is, we do not know. We cannot know. The story is still unfolding. Our endless judgments, our compulsive labeling, they are the very roots of anxiety. We live in constant tension, afraid of what may come, desperate to hold on to what we call good, terrified of what we call bad. But if we could live like the farmer, with that soft smile of maybe, suffering would dissolve like morning mist. So then, what is the alternative? If not control, if not judgment, what is left? Attention. Pure, unfiltered, childlike attention. Instead of trying to change what is, try simply to look at it. Feel the anxiety in your chest. Don't call it bad. Don't try to fix it. Just feel it as it is. Listen to the sound of the rain on the roof. Don't call it pleasant. Don't call it unpleasant. Just listen. Look at the light filtering through the trees. Don't say, how beautiful. Don't say, how ordinary. Just look. And when you do this, something miraculous happens. The world, which had grown flat and gray, suddenly becomes alive again. Everything shimmers with mystery, as if seen for the first time. You become like a child, and for a child, everything is gee whiz. The most ordinary pebble is a jewel. The most common insect is a dragon. The whole world is vibrant, alive, radiant. Now, I must warn you to live this way feels like living without a net, because the ego desperately wants guarantees. It wants security, certainty, a safety rope to cling to. But life offers no such thing, and that, my friends, is its beauty. The tree does not ask for a guarantee of spring. It simply blossoms. The bird does not demand a contract with the sky. It simply spreads its wings and flies. Living without a net is to realize you don't actually have to let go, because there is nothing to hold on to. There never was. You see, all along, you have been like a man clutching at empty air, imagining it was a rope. And when you finally look, you laugh, because there is nothing to release. You are already free. This is the wisdom of unknowing. We are so desperate to know, to pin down, to fix, to explain. But what if we could rest in the vastness of not knowing? What if we could meet each moment without the burden of labels, without the need for certainty? Then life would not be a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The river flows, and you flow with it. The wind blows, and you bend with it. The stars burn, and you burn with them. There is no plan to follow, no secret key to find. There is only this moment, this breath, this dance. And when you see this, you discover a peace deeper than answers. The peace of not needing to know. The peace of simply being. And here comes the final joke of it all. The very thing you have been searching for, freedom, peace, the end of suffering, was never hiding. It was here all along. It's like looking for your own head. You can twist and turn, peer into every mirror, ask every teacher, but you will never see it directly, because it is what you are looking from. In the same way, you are the very freedom you seek. You are the very peace you long for. You are it. Always, already here, and the moment you stop searching, the moment you stop touching, you see it like a joke that was waiting all along. And then perhaps you laugh. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real deep down you is the whole universe. And when you realize this, that there is no rope to grasp, no net to fall into, no separate self to protect, you stop struggling, you stop suffering, and you live. Not tomorrow, not when you figured it all out, but now, always now. So here we are, my friends, at the final turn of this little journey together. We began with a knot, the knot of suffering, the sense that you are a lonely little creature, cast adrift in a vast and hostile universe. And perhaps along the way you've noticed that knot beginning to loosen. Not by force, not by pulling at it, but simply by seeing it for what it is, an illusion. You see, all along, the suffering was not in life itself, but in the way we held on to it. The way we tried to freeze the dance into a still photograph. The way we insisted on being the permanent guest in an impermanent party. And life, of course, refuses. Life moves, it dances, it breathes. And so our suffering was the friction between our demand for solidity and the universe's endless fluidity. Now, let us tie the threads together. We began with separation, a skin-encapsulated ego, looking out through the eyes as if through tiny windows, fearing the world outside. We discovered that this little self, this lonely I, is no more than a mask, a role in a play. And behind the mask, why behind the mask is the entire theater, the stage, the lights, the script, the orchestra, the audience. All of it is you playing hide and seek with itself. And what a marvelous trick it is to hide from yourself so thoroughly that you can forget your true nature, only to rediscover it with a rush of laughter and tears. For what is enlightenment but a cosmic game of peekaboo? You hid, and now you see. And so, let me remind you of something very important. Life is not a journey with some grand prize at the end. It is a symphony. You don't play the symphony to get to the end of it. No one listens to Beethoven's Ninth and says, "Oh, I can't wait for the final note." That would be absurd. No, you listen for the play of notes, the rise and fall, the silence between the sounds. Life is precisely like that. It is a song. And you are invited to sing along, not to rush to the final chord. The meaning, you see, is not waiting at the finish line. The meaning is now, in the laughing child, in the sound of rain against the window, in the pulse of your own breath. The tragedy of human suffering is that we forget the music and try to turn it into a race. We strain to arrive, all the while missing the very thing we came for, the dancing of the notes. And this is why, you see, the masters, the sages, the poets, they laugh. They laugh not because they mock life, but because they finally got the joke. They realized that there was nothing to get. Now, think for a moment of a dancer. A dancer does not dance to arrive at a particular spot on the floor. If they did, the quickest way would be to walk directly there. No, the dancer dances because the movement itself is the delight. So too with the universe. It does not spin galaxies into being because it needs them to arrive somewhere. It spins because spinning is its joy. You are not here to accomplish some divine checklist. You are here because the cosmos could not resist the artistry of making a you. You are its pirouette, its laughter, its brushstroke of color. But remember this, the dance always includes its opposite. The spin requires the stillness. The music requires the silence. The wave requires the trough. So don't imagine that to live in harmony means to avoid sorrow, or to escape death, or to outrun the shadow. To live is to embrace the shadow as the partner of the light, to hold both hands in the dance. Suffering only arises when we insist on clinging to one hand and rejecting the other. Think once more of the wave. The wave rises, curls, and crashes, and all the while it trembles, saying, "I must not end. I must hold myself together." But the truth is, the wave never ends. Its water was the ocean all along. When it falls, it simply returns to itself. And you, dear listener, are precisely the same. You are not something apart from this grand ocean of being. You are the ocean waving. And when you fall, you do not end, you return. So breathe. And in that breath, realize it is not you breathing. It is the cosmos breathing through you. And so, perhaps you wonder, what am I to do now? And the marvelous answer is, nothing in particular. Or rather, everything. There is no prescribed action, no secret key, no final step. The great relief of awakening is that life no longer needs to be conquered. You don't need to force it into meaning. It is meaning already. Just as a flower does not bloom with an agenda, you do not need one either. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived. Try this. Tomorrow morning, as you step outside, don't name anything you see. Don't call it tree, don't call it bird, don't call it sky. Just look, just listen. Let the universe wash over you, without the filter of labels. You will find it is alive, shimmering miraculous, because you have stopped trying to make it fit into the tight little boxes of thought. So let me invite you now, the next time anxiety rises, see if you can notice it not as an enemy, but as a ripple in the dance. The next time sorrow comes, see if you can cradle it gently, like a violin note in the symphony. And the next time joy visits, welcome it, but don't cling to it. Let it pass too, for everything is part of the rhythm. Remember, you are not merely listening to the music, you are the music. Let us end, then, with this. You are a function of what the whole universe is doing, in the same way a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing. You are not a puppet dangling on strings, nor a stranger lost in a foreign land. You are the land, the strings, the puppeteer, the play, the laughter, the tears. So when you suffer, remember, it is the universe stretching itself into form, into contrast, into dance. And when you let go, you realize that you were never separate at all. So go now, not with heavy commandments, but with curiosity. Look out the window. See the sky, the leaves, the people passing by. Hear the hum of life around you. Don't name it, don't judge it, just let it sing to you. For in the end, there is no end. Only the eternal music, the endless dance of energy. And in that knowing, suffering dissolves. Right here, right now. Marriage, as we know it, is often a beautiful illusion crafted from fear. The socially sanctioned promise to make love stay. And yet, love, like water, slips through clenched fists. We swear before priests and judges that we will feel the same way forever, that we will keep our hearts fixed like the stars. But the universe doesn't work like that, neither does the heart. We say, I love you, but then we must notarize it, stamp it, file it in legal documents. What was once wild and spontaneous becomes measured, certified, and sealed under watchful eyes. We have turned marriage into a contract, not a dance, a bond of ownership, rather than a celebration of freedom. Most people, when they say, I do, unconsciously mean, you're mine now. That is often where the trouble begins. For while some rare and beautiful unions do thrive in shared commitment, many falter when love becomes entangled with possession. You cannot bind another soul and expect it to remain free, and love above all needs space to breathe if it is to sing. Falling in love is divine madness. It is irrational, uncontrollable, and glorious. You don't rise into love, you fall. There is something fundamentally risky about it, something sacred. Because to love is to surrender, to give up control. To fall is to say, here I am, do what you will with me. Sensible people don't fall in love. They calculate, they measure, they protect. But the moment you fall in love, you are no longer in control. That is why it is mad. And in that madness, there is a higher sanity. Now here's where the real trouble begins. We try to capture the mystery of love and lock it in a legal cage. We go before judges and priests, and in the name of God, the state, and sometimes even the police, we swear to feel a certain way forever. Can you imagine? We take something as wild and unpredictable as falling in love, and we try to make it permanent, binding, respectable. It's as if love isn't real unless it's signed, sealed, and witnessed by vicars and attorneys. And so this lightning bolt from the sky, this mad surrender of the soul, is converted into a contractual obligation, a legal performance. You're no longer dancing, you're following choreography. And so the sacred becomes rehearsed. Spontaneity gives way to strategy. You keep little lists of things to remember, the right words, the right gestures, the right timing. You are now managing love. You are working at it. And the more you work at it, the less it is there. Love, which was once a leap of faith, has now become a performance under contract. And in that effort to keep it, to secure it, we strangle it. It retreats quietly, respectfully behind the curtains of duty and obligation. Marriages don't always fail with drama. Most collapse quietly under the weight of our attempt to control what was never meant to be controlled. The real tragedy is not that love disappears, it's that we pretend it hasn't. We convince ourselves that if we just act loving enough, if we go through the motions, the feeling will catch up. But that is not how the heart works. We send flowers, we write notes, we plan dinners, but not from desire, from duty. We become performers on a stage we did not realize we had stepped onto. And the audience is not our beloved, but our own fear. Fear of failure. Fear of change. Fear of being alone. You cannot force love to behave. The more you grip it, the more it slips away. It is like holding a flame in your hand. The tighter your fist, the faster it dies. We don't talk about this much because we're afraid, because we were told that true love means permanence, that if it changes, it was never real. You see, most of us were raised to believe that real love means forever. But who said that? Where did we get this idea that if it doesn't last until death, it wasn't true? What whispered that myth into our ears so convincingly that we never stopped to question it? This is the root of so much suffering. Because the moment we believe love must be permanent to be valid, we begin to fight change. And yet, look at the universe, nothing stays the same. Galaxies spin, stars collapse, even mountains erode. The only thing that doesn't change is plastic. And we dare to think love should? When we let go of the belief that love equals forever, something incredible happens. We stop clutching. We stop demanding. Love stops being a jail and starts becoming what it always was meant to be, a freedom, a presence, a moment of shared wonder that asks for nothing but honesty. You know you're in love, not because you've made a promise, but because you feel joy in their presence. You feel the urge to protect what you love, to nurture it. You feel pain when it suffers, peace when it's near. And most of all, love reveals itself in the giving, in the watching, in the simple act of being with. But then fear creeps in, the fear of losing. And so we try to bind it, control it, freeze it in place. We confuse our need for certainty with love itself. And in doing so, we kill the very thing we meant to protect. But this simply isn't true. Love changes. It breathes. It pulses. It has its own seasons. And pretending that it doesn't is what slowly kills it. Honesty, not effort, is the lifeblood of connection. Better to say, this is how I feel now, than to pretend you still feel how you once did. To love someone truly is not to promise eternal passion. It is to promise presence. And presence only exists in truth. People work very hard to keep a marriage together. And as they do so, they may fail to recognize that they are being untrue to their own emotions. They say, I must control my feelings for the sake of the children, for the sake of society. And so they work and work. And one of the ways of working is to convince yourself that you are still in love. You go through the motions. You hypnotize yourself with loving language. You remember to buy the flowers. You keep a diary for anniversaries because forgetting would be unacceptable. You do the things you're supposed to do, and you think, this is what love must be. The performance goes on, but the presence has left the stage, and what once was alive, spontaneous and mad and beautiful has become respectable and dead. That, you see, is the tragedy. Not that love disappears, but that we pretend it hasn't. Not that we change, but that we lie about it. And in doing so, we trade the real for the role. And that, my friends, is how most marriages quietly wither not from conflict, but from pretense. You see, love is not something you can work on like a job. It is a flame. And if you try to pin it down, it dies. You cannot force a feeling to remain by obligation. And yet, this is precisely what so many marriages are built, upon a quiet, desperate pretending. And I speak not from theory, but from bitter experience. You build yourself into a wall-to-wall emotional trap, and in the background something in you knows it's not real. You feel it, like a ghost. The true feeling, the spontaneous magic's gone, but the performance must go on. This is why the mystery dies. Not because love is gone, but because truth is. The honesty that once connected two people has been replaced by performance. And so the marriage continues respectable on the outside, but quietly crumbling within. You see, to love someone truly is not to chain them to a past feeling. It is to stand present with them every day and to say honestly, this is where I am now, and to let them do the same. That is the only kind of love worth having, the kind that breathes, the kind that changes, the kind that is free. Now let's look clearly at what people mean when they say, my husband or my wife. You see, behind that little possessive pronoun is a very old and very dangerous illusion that love means ownership. It doesn't. You do not own another human being. You do not own their soul, their body, or their attention. And the moment you try to, the whole thing begins to rot. We think that by securing someone legally, ceremonially, and socially, we somehow keep the love in place. But love, by its very nature, is free. It arises when you're not looking. It dances only when the music is real. The more you try to pin it down, the more it slips away. To say, I love you, should never mean, now you belong to me. It should mean, I choose to dance with you now, and I'll choose again tomorrow if the music still moves us. But instead we shackle it. We say, you may not change. You must continue to be who I need you to be. And when the other inevitably begins to shift us, all things must we feel betrayed. Not because they were dishonest, but because we expected permanence in a world that only offers movement. The truth is, you don't need someone to be yours. You need them to be themselves. And if they choose to share that with you, then you are blessed. But if you demand it, expect it, or require it, you have already lost it. Love is not a cage. It's not a certificate. It's not a role in a play. It is simply the freedom to see another as they are and to let them be. We must begin to imagine a different kind of relationship. One not based on obligation, but on presence. Not on permanence, but on participation. You see, love isn't something you can force to last forever by swearing to it. The moment you make it a duty, you've robbed it of its essence. Real love, like real music, happens in the moment. It is not a means to an end, it is the point itself. Now, suppose two people say to each other, let us agree not to trap one another. Let us be honest, rather than loyal to a performance. That, you see, could be the beginning of something true. Instead of saying, I will always love you, say, I will be true to how I feel. And I will respect how you feel, even when it changes, because it will change. Everything does. A marriage, if it is to be anything sacred, must be a daily meeting of two people who allow each other to be. Not a prison of promises, but a shared space of mutual freedom. And the irony, of course, is that only in freedom can love truly thrive. Only when you stop trying to hold someone do they come willingly. Only when you let go does anything real begin. Let marriage, then, be not a trap of fixed roles, but a place where two individuals meet in truth, again and again, where change is not feared, but welcomed, where love is not performed, but allowed. And when it fades, as all forms do, we do not blame it for ending. We simply acknowledge that it lived, and that is enough. You see, many of us grew up with this picture of what love and marriage should look like: forever smiles, unchanging vows, and happily ever after. But real life isn't like that. People change. Feelings shift. Circumstances evolve. And that doesn't mean something went wrong. It just means life is alive. If you've ever sat next to someone you once loved and felt the silence between you grow heavier over time, you'll understand. If you've ever tried to force the connection to stay the same when it's already moved on, you'll understand. And if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt that you're not the same person who said, "I do," years ago, then you already know the truth. Love isn't supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to be real. And real love, like all living things, needs room to breathe, to stumble, to transform. It doesn't always last in the way we imagined, but that doesn't mean it failed. Sometimes love ends, and sometimes it begins again in a new way with someone else, or even within yourself. So if you're in love, be present, be honest, don't chain it down with fear, and if you're letting go, do it with grace. Thank the love that brought you here, and know this: you are not broken. You are growing. Let love be what it truly is. A gift freely given, not a contract.
There comes a time, you see, when the strength you've always carried begins to tremble beneath its own weight. You wake up one morning, and though nothing terrible has happened, you feel as though you've been carrying the world for too long. People still say you're strong, that you handle things well, that you always seem composed, but inside there's a small voice whispering, "I can't keep doing this." Not because you've failed, but because somewhere along the way, strength became a costume. We are taught from a very young age that to survive, we must be strong, to stand firm, to endure, to push through. But the problem is, we're rarely told what kind of strength we're supposed to have. So, we begin to mistake hardness for resilience, silence for composure, and endurance for peace. We think being strong means not breaking, but in reality, life was never about being unbreakable. It was about learning how to flow, to bend, to soften, and to let go. You see, the ocean is strong not because it resists, but because it yields. It gives way to every current, yet nothing can destroy it. And so it is with us. The strength you've been chasing, the strength you've been praised for, is the kind that hides pain under control. But true strength, the kind that comes from being alive, doesn't need to control anything. It is the quiet acceptance of what already is. When you are tired of being strong, it is not a sign of weakness. It is the beginning of wisdom. Because the kind of strength that exhausts you was never truly yours, it was borrowed from fear. The fear of falling apart, the fear of being seen, the fear of disappointing others. You've held everything together for so long that the idea of letting go feels like dying. But perhaps that's the point. A kind of death is necessary before you can be alive without pretending. Most people live as if life is a test of endurance. They measure their worth by how much they can withstand. But what happens when endurance becomes emptiness? When you've been so composed, so self-contained, that you've forgotten what it feels like to be held by something larger than yourself? The truth is, no one can carry life alone. The river doesn't push itself forward. The tree doesn't lift itself toward the sun. Strength, as nature shows, is always in cooperation with the invisible. So perhaps what you're feeling now, the exhaustion, the quiet ache, the sense that your inner walls are crumbling, is not failure at all. It's simply the moment life has chosen to remind you that strength was never the goal. Presence was. You've been so good at holding things together that you've forgotten what it feels like to fall apart safely. And that is why you're tired. Not because you're broken, but because you've been living as though the whole universe depends on your composure. Imagine, just for a moment, if you didn't have to hold it all. Imagine if the world didn't collapse when you stopped pretending to be fine. What if the strength you need now is not the kind that carries, but the kind that releases? To cry when you need to admit that you're lost, to rest without guilt. What if the most powerful thing you could do was nothing at all? To simply breathe, to be, to exist as you are, not as the person you've been performing, but as the being beneath all the performance. When you stop trying to be strong, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see that everything you were holding together never needed your strength to exist. Life keeps moving. The world continues to breathe, and you, too, begin to breathe differently, slower, deeper, without resistance. It's a strange kind of freedom to realize that your collapse is not a tragedy, but a transformation. It's the caterpillar dissolving in the cocoon. It doesn't fight to hold its form. It allows the melting, and what emerges is something it could never have imagined while it was clinging to its old identity. So, if you are tired of being strong, let that tiredness be holy. Let it be your teacher. Because the end of forced strength is the beginning of true surrender, and surrender is the birthplace of real power. You might think surrender means giving up, but that's only because you've been taught that control is safety. You've lived as though your grip on things is what keeps life from falling apart. Yet, if you watch closely, everything you love has always been beyond your control. The sunrise, the laughter of a friend, the timing of grace, none of it was your doing. And yet it arrived perfectly. Strength isn't about holding the tide. It's about learning to trust its rhythm. You see, we mistake life for something we must manage, when in truth, it's something we are invited to experience. When you are tired of being strong, it means you're ready to stop living from the surface. You're ready to let the current carry you back into your own depth. But there's something tender that happens in this stage. You begin to grieve. You grieve the person who always showed up, who never complained, who carried everything without asking for help. You grieve the mask of strength that protected you for so long, even though it was never meant to last forever. It kept you safe once, but now it's only keeping you distant. In that grief, something sacred unfolds. Compassion. You begin to see yourself not as the hero of your suffering, but as the child of the universe, fragile, imperfect, and completely loved. The universe does not demand that you be strong. It only asks that you be real. There's a peace that comes from realizing you no longer have to prove your resilience. You no longer have to appear put together to be worthy of rest. The truth is, you are not admired for your strength. You are loved for your being. And perhaps that's why you've grown so weary, because strength was never meant to be an identity. It was meant to be a moment. You were never supposed to stay strong forever. You were meant to soften again and again until you remembered how to feel. When you stop striving to be strong, your heart becomes available again. You begin to feel life's subtleties, the way silence hums, the way small moments expand, the way simple things like sunlight through a window can make you cry without reason. You rediscover what it means to be alive, not because you've regained your old strength, but because you found something deeper, the strength to be open. The world doesn't need your armor. It needs your aliveness. It doesn't need your perfect posture. It needs your presence. The real power of a human being lies not in endurance, but in receptivity, the courage to let the world touch you. So if you find yourself exhausted, unable to keep being strong, don't fight it. You're not falling behind. You're finally aligning. You're remembering that existence itself has always been strong enough to carry you. There is a hidden grace in reaching the end of your strength, because that's where you discover the strength of life itself. And life, you see, never needed you to perform. It only ever wanted you to be. And so, when you've stopped pretending to be strong, when the armor finally slips and you can't keep your composure any longer, something extraordinary begins to happen. It isn't loud and it isn't dramatic. It's quiet, almost invisible, like the sound of rain at dawn or the gentle exhale after a long-held breath. For the first time in perhaps years, you are no longer fighting life. You are letting it hold you. You begin to realize that the world was never asking you to carry it. All this time, you've been trying to shoulder what was always meant to flow through you. Emotions, moments, people, they were never possessions. They were passing clouds. And the moment you stop trying to hold them in place, the sky clears. It's strange, isn't it? You spend years believing that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But when you finally do, you discover that what falls apart was never real to begin with. The image of who you were supposed to be, the perfection you were meant to maintain, the reputation you worked so hard to uphold, they dissolve quietly. And beneath all that, you find something soft and alive, yourself, unguarded and free. Now, I don't mean that everything becomes easy. The waves of life will still come. The uncertainties will still whisper, but you meet them differently. You no longer brace for them, you breathe with them. You see, life has always been a rhythm, a dance between strength and surrender. You can't hold your breath through the entire song and still call it dancing. Real strength is a kind of participation. It's being able to stand in the storm without needing the storm to end. It's allowing yourself to tremble and still say, this too is me. In the great flow of things, what endures is not the rigid but the supple. The bamboo bends and does not break. The river cuts through stone, not through force, but through patience. And in that same way, when you let go of the need to appear unshaken, you discover a resilience that cannot be destroyed. When you are tired of being strong, it's life calling you home, home to a way of being that is effortless, a way that doesn't strive to manage or maintain, but simply to move in harmony with what is. This is not resignation, it is awakening. The understanding that the universe was never separate from you. The wind that breaks the branch is the same wind that carries the leaf. There is a subtle peace that arises when you stop trying to be the one holding everything together. You realize that even your so-called failures were never really yours. They were the universe learning through you, expressing through your form for a while, then moving on. And when you see this clearly, the guilt fades. You no longer feel like you've disappointed life, because you begin to see you are life. You cannot fall out of it. It is in those moments, sitting quietly in your own company, where strength and softness finally become one. You start to notice things again. The taste of morning coffee, the rhythm of your breathing, the way sunlight spills through the curtains, small, ordinary miracles that had been drowned out by your endless effort to stay strong. You realize how much beauty you missed while you were busy being unbreakable. So now you can finally rest. You can let life hold you instead of trying to hold it all together. You can admit that you don't always know what you're doing, that you're not always fine, and that maybe you never had to be. Because in truth, strength was never about never falling. It was about learning to land. You see, the tree that loses its leaves each winter does not mourn their loss. It trusts the cycle. It knows that what falls away will one day return, transformed. And you, too, are part of that same rhythm. The self that breaks is not dying, it is shedding. The weariness you feel is not the end, but the beginning of renewal. There's something deeply freeing about realizing that you don't have to earn peace. You don't have to prove your worth through resilience. Peace comes when you no longer resist what is. It comes when you stop reaching for tomorrow and simply rest in the completeness of now. When you stop trying to be strong, you become real. You begin to love without condition, to feel without shame, to exist without needing to explain. The softness you once feared becomes your strength. It's the kind of power that doesn't dominate, but understands, that doesn't force, but allows. It's easy to think that the world only respects the loud and the unyielding, but all things that endure, mountains, oceans, silence, do so through stillness. That stillness is your true strength. It isn't born from control, but from connection. It's the strength of water, of breath, of being at peace with not knowing. So, when you feel yourself faltering, when you can no longer keep up the act of composure, don't resist it. Sit down, breathe, and let yourself be carried. You don't need to fix what was never broken. You only need to remember that you are allowed to be soft. Because what holds this universe together is not force, but love, not effort, but flow. And the moment you stop fighting that truth, life rushes back in, not to demand more of you, but to remind you that you were never alone in the first place. Strength was never the goal, you see. The goal was wholeness. And wholeness includes everything: the tears, the laughter, the fatigue, the surrender. So if you are tired of being strong, you are right where you need to be. The storm is not against you, it's clearing you. And when the rain finally stops, you'll find yourself standing in a world that feels strangely new, not because it changed, but because you did. You stopped pretending to be the one carrying the world and allowed the world to carry you. And that, my friend, is real strength, the kind that needs no witness, no applause, no armor, the kind that simply is.
Some people say awakening kills your motivation, that once you wake up and see through the game, you won't want to play anymore. And perhaps you felt that yourself. You start asking, if life is just an illusion, why bother? Why chase goals? Why work hard? Why get out of bed at all? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? To look at the world and suddenly see the shine come off. Like the prizes you once chased don't quite sparkle the way they used to. And yet, that's where many men find themselves. You've built, you've worked, you've carried the weight. But when the game no longer fools you, the question creeps in, now what? Is this awakening? Or is it the end of your drive? But that's rather like a child who discovers that hide and seek isn't serious business, and then declares, well then, I shan't play anymore. You see, the whole charm of a game is that it isn't serious. If it were, it would be work. And the beauty of life is very much the same. When you awaken, you don't stop living. You simply stop clutching at life. You realize it's a dance, a play, a marvelous hide and seek between what you think you are and what you truly are. But the ego doesn't like that kind of play. The ego wants medals, trophies, something to wave about and say, look at me. And when it fails, it collapses into self-pity. Oh no, I've lost my drive. What's really happened is quite the opposite. You've been set free from the dreary business of proving yourself, and in that freedom, the ordinary shines, walking barefoot across the floor, watching a leaf tumble through the air, each one a small miracle, if only you pause long enough to notice. Because, let's be honest, what most of us call motivation is usually nothing of the sort. It isn't energy. It's anxiety in a clever disguise. A little whisper inside that says, go on now. Achieve something, prove something, carve your initials into the universe before you vanish. So off you go, collecting medals, chasing money, buying a slightly faster car than your neighbor. Not because the doing is delightful, but because the thought of being nothing frightens you out of your skin. Curious, isn't it? You spend half your life exhausted, not for the thing itself, but to shine up this image of me. And then awakening happens. The curtain parts, the lights come up, and suddenly the actor notices the crown on his head is only paper. The whole performance, a comedy dressed as tragedy. Imagine a bird outside your window. It doesn't sing to impress you or to pass an audition. It doesn't say, "Listen, I've composed a new tune, I do hope you approve." It sings because singing is what a bird does. And when you awaken, life begins to move through you in just that way. Not to prove, not to compete, but simply to express itself. Like a tree putting out blossoms, or a river tumbling over stone. And here is the delicious secret. Awakening is not the end of passion, it is the end of pretense. You find yourself falling in love not with trophies or achievements, but with existence itself. The laughter of your child, the sound of rain on the roof, even the ache in your bones. All of it is music you had rushed past before. And a strange realization dawns. The very troubles you once cursed are part of the rhythm. Pain and joy, loss and gain. They shape one another as valleys shape the mountains. Without shadow, light is flat. Without ache, love is shallow. This is why you are here. Not to escape the dream, but to taste it. For what kind of game would it be if you could win at once? Without risk? Without surprise? The whole delight of being human is that it isn't easy. So awakening doesn't lift you out of the world. It drops you right into the thick of it. Heart open, laughing at the cosmic joke, grateful for every note in the symphony. And you see, the point was never to arrive anywhere. The point is that it's happening at all. So instead of being whipped along by fear or dragged about by ambition, a new kind of energy begins to move you. Not the restless push of must do, must win, but the effortless pull of delight. It's the difference between rowing a boat upstream until your arms ache and suddenly noticing the current is carrying you all along. Now don't mistake this for laziness. Play is not lazy. Children at play have more energy than any businessman chasing a deadline. A musician absorbed in his instrument. A craftsman shaping wood with care. A gardener lost in the rhythm of planting. All of them are moved by this other kind of fire. Not the fire of fear, but of joy. Life begins to act through you, as naturally as a tree putting out blossoms in spring. And you find you are no longer the manager, the pusher, the taskmaster. You are the expression. The river doesn't need motivation to flow. The sun doesn't get up in the morning saying, "I'd better shine or else." And when you're awake, you discover you are not separate from that river, not apart from that sun. You are the same unfolding energy. And so your doing becomes like dancing. The steps are there, the rhythm is there, but it isn't forced. It's play. It's music. It's effortless. That is the energy of awakening. Not driven by the whip of should, but moved by the joy of being. And here's the marvelous joke of it all. When you stop grasping at meaning, life hands it to you everywhere. The ego thinks, if I can't be the hero, the conqueror, then what's left? But awakening flips the whole thing on its head. You begin to see that life was never asking you to conquer it, it was inviting you to join it. You discover a kind of freedom that was hiding in plain sight. The freedom to laugh at yourself, to stumble without shame, to play the game knowing full well it's a game. And from there, everything ordinary becomes radiant. Washing the dishes, walking the dog, talking nonsense with your friends. none of it is wasted, because none of it needs to be anything other than what it is. The meaning you were chasing all those years wasn't somewhere else. It was in the very act of living, unpolished, unpretentious, and already complete. Awakening doesn't take away your passion. It takes away the counterfeit fuel, fear, comparison, that restless itch to measure yourself against everyone else. When you stop treating life as a ledger to balance, life becomes lavish. You begin to notice beauty was never hiding from you. You were simply too busy chasing something else to see it. You see, the beauty of awakening isn't in having life all figured out. It's in discovering that life, just as it is, has always been unspeakably beautiful. Awakening is beautiful because it hands you back your own life. Before, you were living under a spell, pulled along by comparisons, fears, and the endless race to be enough. Awakening cracks that spell, and suddenly you can breathe. You discover that you were never missing anything, that nothing out there had the power to complete you, because what you were seeking was already in you all along. That recognition is not just relief, it's freedom. It's beautiful because it restores wonder. A child doesn't need a reason to chase fireflies. They do it because life itself is astonishing. Awakening returns you to that innocence, but with the depth of everything you've lived through. It's not naive joy, it's seasoned joy. The kind that knows pain and yet chooses to marvel anyway. It's beautiful because it softens you. Instead of clinging to control, you begin to trust. You see that even your struggles were part of the story that shaped you. And when you understand that, bitterness gives way to gratitude. What once felt like punishment reveals itself as preparation. What once looked like chaos begins to show its pattern. And above all, awakening reconnects you with the sacredness of existence itself. To be awake is to realize that life was never a problem to solve, but a mystery to behold. Every breath, every touch, every fleeting moment is a gift you don't own but are allowed to experience. Awakening doesn't make you abandon life, it makes you fall in love with it. Not because it's perfect, but because it's here, and you are here to witness it. That recognition is the gift. And the great joke is this: you don't need a reason to love it. You don't need to win at it. Being awake is simply falling in love with life over and over again for no reason at all. Like watching a bird cross the sky and suddenly feeling a gratitude so deep you can't explain it. Gratitude that the bird exists and that you exist to see it. So, awakening doesn't take you out of the world, it drops you right into the middle of it. Laughing, weeping, playing, knowing the whole time that the point was never to arrive anywhere. The point is that it's happening at all. So remember this, you are not here to prove you're alive. You are here to be alive. And once you see that, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary. To live awake is to let life hold you, instead of you holding life. It's to bow, not in resignation, but in reverence. Reverence for the sheer impossibility that you are here, that this world exists, that you get to taste it at all. And when you live that way, gratitude ceases to be something you practice. It becomes the air you breathe. You feel grateful for the good, and also grateful for the mistakes, for every wrong turn that opened a new road. Grateful even for the ones who hurt you, because without them you might never have learned to bend, to soften, to grow. You feel grateful for the arguments that taught you patience, for the failures that stripped away your pride, for the disappointments that pushed you deeper into yourself. And in the end, you feel grateful for everything, for the sky and the sea, for bread on the table and laughter in the street, grateful for traffic jams, for rain-soaked shoes, for the sheer fact that anything at all is possible. Because awakening shows you this marvelous truth. Nothing is wasted. Not the joy, not the sorrow, not even the foolishness. It all belongs, and it is all part of the miracle that you are here to live it.